I grew up here as a child. This whole embankment is an anti-tank ditch at which, at the highest point of the pivot, the Hitler Youth would put sticky bombs underneath the Allied tanks in the hope that they would stick, they would have enough time to roll away and the tanks would explode. So this beautiful little river is called the River Nias, and I'm situated in a beautiful village in Germany, North Germany, called Goch on the Dutch border. And in fact, I grew up here as a child. There's a line of what were Bundeswehr or army barrack houses, and just behind that is where I used to live. In the winter time, this would freeze up and we would ice skate along here. Why does this interest you? Well, it probably doesn't. However, I grew up with a lot of World War II veterans, and they would walk me around the place here and tell me about the defence of the town of Goch. Now, the Allies attacked Goch in February of 1945. Now, not all of Germany was part of the Nazi party. There were socialists, there were communists, there were lots of different factions. Not all towns, therefore, wanted to defend for the Nazi regime. Many towns in various places around Germany did not put up a defence when the Allies came through. That wasn't the case in this village. In the village of Goch there was a defence. However, the German High Command didn't think the brunt of the Western Allied assault would happen here, because there's a big forest, the Reichswald, to the northwest, very hard to get through. So the German High Command did not put any elite troops in this area. They only put reserves here. And I know for a fact that there were 3 tank trenches covering the town of Goch, and where we're standing at the moment is where, a little bit further on from here, is where one of those tank trenches were. And the Canadians and the Scots came through here. The Germans were expecting them to come here from the south. In fact, they came through from the north. It was a bit of a surprise attack. I'm now at the outskirts to the city of Goch, to the north. And it was here at 1 a.m. a night attack was launched by the 2nd Seaforth 152nd Brigade. They attacked north going south, and just along here there were a number of anti-tank barriers that the Germans, particularly the Hitler Youth, had set up, but it couldn't stop them. The Scots regiment came through here and attacked the town. They had to clear the town building by building, and because the area had been bombarded for several days prior to the attack, most of the civilians were, of course, hiding within the cellars of the houses. And what the Allies would do is they would simply open the cellar door, throw some hand grenades in, and, well, you can imagine what scene that would have been. And the accounts of the Canadian Anglo force were that it was a messy exercise, which basically means that they would have encountered the bodies and limbs of women and children mostly. War, it's terrible and has terrible consequences.
Meanwhile, on the northern sector of the front, the Canadian First Army under General Crerar attacks east of Nijmegen. Cleve is taken, Gau is taken. The Rhine is reached at Emmerich, and the tanks go forward. Here begins the new Allied offensive. In the first 2 weeks, the Canadians took 10,000 prisoners. They cleared the Reichswald forest, cleared a maze of German junctions, broke through 3 belts of the Siegfried Line. And war comes into the German homeland as it came to other homelands when the Nazis were riding high. Germany is learning what it means to begin a war.
According to the accounts of the 8th Royal Scots and the Gordons, resistance was quite heavy, and the Germans were digging in their mortars just to the south from this location. But of course they were outgunned, outmanned by the Allied assault. However, the Germans posted snipers a bit further south, more towards the end of the town, and one of the leaders of the Allied attack was shot in the head at a doorway. And all around here, you can see here, there's some horses just by the Neas River, which is of course beautiful. Near here there's lots of farmhouses, and they literally had to fight farmhouse to farmhouse. Lots of sort of rural fighting going on with machine gun fire and mortar fire and snipers looming about. Eventually the Germans were overwhelmed, and again, according to the accounts of the Allied, many of them were then seen simply escaping eastwards to other cities where they would then lock down, barricade down in the defence of their nation. I'm now on the same side of the river as I was before, only a bit further on. You can see behind me is a caravan park, or motorhome park perhaps I should say. You can see on the left here is this embankment, and you would think this embankment comes from perhaps the caravan park, but it doesn't. This whole embankment is an anti-tank ditch that the Hitler Youth created in 1944, and one of my neighbours, many of my neighbours who fought in February and March of 1945 would be behind this anti-tank ditch. The tanks would roll up from the Allies, they would pivot up, and at the exact point at the highest point of the pivot, the Hitler Youth would put sticky bombs underneath the Allied tanks in the hope that they would stick, they would have enough time to roll away, and the tanks would explode. This was actually happening in this section of the River Neas in Goch.
The history of my hometown of Goch goes back to at least 1261, when it was under the control of the Grafen of Geldern. The town was once a fortress town, and this is its remaining gate, called the Steintor, built around 1341. This town has seen countless battles in its 700-year history, but the Allied attack in February 1945 was by far its worst. Although the original Klovekorns came from an area further north from here, a town called Vechta, I of course pay respect to my own family members who lie in our family burial plot here, such as Arnold Klovekorn, a hero of the First World War. It places the Second World War into perspective, as multiple generations have fought and died here for hundreds of years. My next door neighbour, Herr Walter Verführt, with whom I spent many years talking about the war, told me that many of the adult soldiers had either lost nerve and retreated or surrendered, and he and his classmates from the Hitler Youth faced the Allied onslaught without question, fiercely determined to protect the fields and homes they had grown up in.